Excellent. Well, good afternoon, folks. Good to have you with us, and welcome to our final session of removing the barriers to belief. Some of you have been on this journey with us. If you're watching this on replay, then hope it's been helpful for you. This session, we're going to do something a little bit different, change tracks a little bit. Over the past 4 sessions, you've heard 3 sessions, I should say, you've heard content regarding topics that are often raised in relation to belief and faith in God. What we're going to do here is put that content and that knowledge into practice. So this is more about how do you effectively engage in discussion with people? How do you share what you believe in a way that is relevant, that keeps the relationship there, but also doesn't hide back and isn't shy about that. I think if you're in the chat there, I'm going to raise a scenario, and if you resonate with it, just say yes or put your comment in. Have you ever been in a discussion with somebody and the discussion turned to faith, and they asked a question, and the question was one you hadn't considered before, and it was one that kind of threw you a little bit, and so you're kind of left, your feet are dangling in the air, you're not sure where to go next, and you're a little bit flustered. I know I've been there. I'm not sure if you've been there as well. Nathan's hand's gone up. It can be tricky, and what do you do in that situation? And this isn't about trying to look like you have all the answers all the time, because we don't, but this is more about how do you stay in that moment, how do you respond honestly and openly, but still engage in the discussion and have the opportunity to come back to that. If you guys are commenting you've been there, it's tricky, but what we want to do is try and give you some tools and some tips as to how to best respond in those situations, and just in general in discussion that you have with those that you hang out with about faith. So Nate, good to have you with us again. This is something that you are passionate about, something that you've been engaged in for a while. Could you check your audio, see if your audio is working? No, not quite. Maybe jump back out and jump back in, and when you come back in, we will continue with that part. This is the part where we just want to really get practical, because knowing about Jesus, knowing about God, and having your faith is something that is so good for you. But how do you share that most effectively with others? So we're going to explore that. Nate, you here? Are you with us?
Is it working now for us, Pastor Fraser?
We have you, yes.
Yay.
Excellent.
So the reason I'm so excited about this topic is because I've embarrassed myself so many times, and I got sick and tired of being so embarrassed and so wrong-footed that I thought, I really want to figure out how this works. And one night, it would have been about 2011, I used to do shift work with the Royal Flying Doctor Service as a pilot. Very exciting work. And I got home one night after a particularly long day. I was a bit tired. The brain sort of isn't quite totally there after a long day, and you're kind of tired.
Yep.
And I just happened to tune into what was, I found out later, was a formal debate. Now, I didn't really know much about debates or about formal debates, but this was a staged public presentation at Birmingham University between William Lane Craig and Peter Milliken. And the topic was, does God exist? Now, I'd been with the Flying Doctors by this stage for a number of years, I think for 3 or 4 years by this point. And I had some very wonderful, educated colleagues. Some of them may have joined us on some previous sessions. Maybe you're with us this afternoon. I don't know. If you are, you're very welcome. You guys have been the inspiration for my journey.
Yeah.
So in the 3 or 4 years working with my colleagues, they kept on asking really good questions, and I kept on feeling like I needed to give a good answer, and I kept on trying. And every time I would come up with, hey, what about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Or, hey, did you see this prophecy in about the kingdom of Tyre, and about the the fact that it would get thrown into the middle of the sea, or what do you think about those four beasts in Daniel and the Revelation stuff? Isn't that kind of exciting? They're like, yeah, but that's all been disproven because it was written later, or had these quick one-liner responses, and I'd suddenly be like, nope. And then Dawkins, the God Delusion came out. So as I heard this debate between William Lane Craig and Peter Millikan, it was really impressive to me. These two men were very respectful. I've seen debates before where they're just sort of, yelling at each other, kind of like you see in Parliament sometimes. It wasn't that at all. It was robust, but these two men were cordial. They were respectful. It was deep. It went for like 3 hours, and after about the first third or so of the debate, I want to be careful how I say this because I'm obviously biased. We're all biased, but it seems, from my perspective at least, trying very hard to look at both sides equally, it seemed pretty clear to me that William Lane Craig, the Christian philosopher, had put down some pretty powerful arguments in defense of his suggestion that there was reason to believe that God existed. And the philosopher guy, that was a non-believer, actually had a background in computer science, and he actually conceded. He said, I'm not really a philosopher. I kind of do more computer stuff. And to be honest, it's been a bit of a complicated debate tonight, and I'm not a professional like the guy next to me is. And I thought that's quite a concession to make. Then William Lane Craig basically got up and did what I would call an altar call. This is Birmingham University. I think they'd paid money to be there. There's like 5,000 people in attendance. And William Lane Craig said, well, you've heard tonight 5 really good reasons why I believe God exists. We haven't heard any reasons yet to believe that he does not exist. So I'd like to just appeal to you from the bottom of my heart that if you found the evidence tonight to be compelling, perhaps you, like me, when I first became a believer as a young adult, perhaps you too might want to put Jesus in your heart, and perhaps you'd be able to enjoy the beauties and blessings that I've enjoyed as a follower of Jesus Christ. And I'm thinking to myself, but he's at Birmingham University. How did he just do that? So that started a real passion. And to cut a long story short, I studied under him because he is one of the world's greatest Christian thinkers alive today. People might know the name Ravi Zacharias more, and I respect him very highly. Ravi is just recently passed away, unfortunately. A godly man as well, highly respected. But William Lane Craig is the academic at the scholarly level. Ravi was more at the popular layperson level. And together, those two guys and others have brought up some interesting insights. So probably said too much there, but that's the background I got into it.
That's good. So that got you started, and since then you've been engaged in multiple discussions with your colleagues, friends, and other people you associate with, just in this area. And so I want to pick your brain a little bit, if that's okay. Ask you a few questions and see what experience you can share with us on this journey. And folks, if you're watching and you want to ask any questions as well or engage, please just put in your comments. If you want to raise a question or raise your hand, we can actually bring you in and you can ask a question in live and video. That's no problems. But this is an opportunity for you to ask the practical, relevant, on the ground questions that you have.
And I would hope too, if you have specific friends or family or loved ones that you're thinking about, we want to preserve confidentiality, but by all means, let's get into specifics. Preserving people's identity and their dignity, but let's make this to the point where we can go home today and take the next step, because we can be very strategic with the Lord's help.
Yeah. All right. So Nathan, first thing, I've got a friend in mind. He doesn't believe in God, and we have a good relationship. We catch up regularly. I guess before we even get into the details of how you have this discussion or how you handle different situations, what would you suggest is a good mindset or approach to have in terms of this relationship? I mean, because it's easy to sometimes as a Christian you want to be really proactive and say, hey, all you people need to know Jesus, and absolutely. but how do you have a good approach which is able to go the distance, maintain the relationship? I guess what's your advice on that one? What's our mindset and what's our end goal?
I guess I should backpedal a bit and say 3 years before I even knew what the word apologetics was or meant, I kind of had a return to Jesus myself. I mean, I'd grown up in the church. My family, some of you guys might know, respected leaders in the church. I knew the stories about God from childhood, but I didn't really have a daily connection with Jesus Christ. And it was about 2008 for the first time in my life. I'm 30 years old at the time, so you can see how old I am now. Age 30, 2008, for the first time in my entire life, I decided that I was going to spend serious time in the Bible. I was going to read at least an hour a day and pray. And that was a very difficult thing for me at the time because the Bible was boring to me. I feel embarrassed admitting it to you now, but I would read the Bible for 5-10 minutes. Hey, time's up. Hang on, I promised God an hour today, but I don't know what else to do. I mean, it's just like having cardboard for breakfast. Or I get on my knees and pray, dear God, please help me today. Bless the missionaries and help me to have a good day at work. Amen. Look at my watch and like 30 seconds has gone past. So I say, God, help me pray again. So I get on my knees and pray, dear Lord, bless the missionaries and help me at work today and help Aunt Murgatroyd down the street. And then my mind is wandering about, my bank account or about what to do at work or how my flight planning went for yesterday's shift or whatever it is. And I couldn't even pray without my mind wandering all over the place. It just felt like it was a formal thing. So I guess the first thing that happened before I got into apologetics was I had to fall in love with Jesus for the first time, age 30, having grown up as a believer, supposedly. So I guess the question would be, what's the mindset? What's the end goal? Why do I want to talk to people about Jesus? Why do I want to have answers to questions that are difficult? Is it because I have low self-esteem and want to build myself up? And I'm speaking to myself as a Pharisee because I did have low self-esteem at times, and I would use apologetics as a way of making myself feel good about myself. If that's a motive, I strongly encourage you to consider Simon Magus in the New Testament. Not a good move. Moses Hull in more recent times, now early Adventist church history. Another man gifted, but used powerful tools in a way that was selfish and ultimately brought about possibly his eternal damnation. So the end goal, what is it? Are you there for yourself? Are you there to boost yourself up? You're there to prove other people wrong? Not a good idea. If you're there because you genuinely care about somebody, you really want to help, you really want to see them close to Jesus, then it's really important for you yourself to be there. You can't sell, you can't share what you haven't got yourself. So what's the end goal? You're trying to be just good friends with them. We've got to be careful that we don't take on this project mentality. Hey, I've got 3 names. Hey, everybody, I'm praying for these 3. Watch me win these 3. Because then all again, it's about you. So it's a personal thing between you and God. I can't judge, but you and God need to be on the same page about what you're doing and why you're doing it. And then we'll work together on the details after that.
Yeah, cool. So you've got that approach. Now let's get into some nitty gritty. Peter's asked a question, so we'll bring him in shortly. You're in a discussion and someone makes this big statement that's contradictory to what you believe. For example, it's ridiculous to think that God could actually exist. Scientists disprove that completely.
Yeah.
My first reaction could be, oh, hey, I've got a great quote I can give back to you, and I can I've got this evidence I can lay before you. What would you suggest be your first response?
To me, the greatest apologists that ever lived, and I've got to be careful. The word apologist, by the way, I use that term very carefully. I'm using it openly today in this group, but the word apologist is not a nice word for most people. If you do a Google search or Wikipedia sort of a thing, you get all kinds of stuff that makes it sound like, someone who won't change their mind, someone who's, fundamentalist, someone who's just trained to argue to win an argument, but doesn't actually have logic or care about things. So anyway, but I think it's really important to to remember that when somebody makes a big claim, it's tempting to want to come in there as the hero. I'm going to get the big guns and shoot down the enemy, and I'm going to win this one. But the greatest apologist to me of all time was Jesus. And we don't have as much about what Jesus said, but the Apostle Paul, we've got a fair amount of what he did. So I use Jesus and Paul. Jesus and Paul had some pretty difficult challenges that they were in, but they tended to start by asking a question. And this, if I want to share nothing else this afternoon, this is my top tip. Ask a question in response to a question. Now, I'm not talking about cutesy playing games. We'll come to that. But when someone tells you something big, like, the Bible's a bunch of fairy tales, the best response I can think of, it works every single time I've had 100% success rate, is, wow, sounds like you've thought about this a lot. I have an interest in this area. I'm really curious. How did you come to this conclusion? What was the mechanism that convinced you? Or what do you find most compelling to make you think, whatever the big claim was? And now, rather than being defensive and shooting down or trying to have all the answers, now you put the burden of proof where it belongs, with them. They're the one that made the claim. Your job now is simply to play the jury and see if the claim measures up. And interestingly enough, as we ask the questions, if it isn't the truth, the balloon will pop all by itself. So we're just there to watch and clap, being careful to remember, though, that our goal is not to win the argument. Our goal is to win the friend. So as the balloon begins to pop, help them patch it, backpedal. Hey, here's some duct tape. Hey, I see your balloon falling apart there. I didn't mean to hurt. Maybe we can salvage this somehow, or maybe I had a dumb question. Anyway, just backpedal. But they won't let you backpedal, so that'll be the fun part.
All right, let's put this into practice. I'll give you a few questions.
Okay.
And then you respond how you would if I were someone you know. So, hey, Nath, you know what? There's these people talk about God existing, but there is just so much horrible stuff that goes on. There's evil, there's pain. If there's a God, he can't be good.
Wow. Yeah. So genuinely, and I'd have this exact same approach. I'd be thinking, wow, I'm totally tracking you there. It seems from your experience there's tremendous, pain and suffering. Is there something in particular that you find most heinous? What is it that really is the straw that breaks the camel's back for you? What is it that really, because I want to get to that. I mean, I can give a big, long, logical answer right now, but I don't know yet what your real issue is, because I had a friend that come to me one day. She said, Nathan, why is there so much pain and suffering in the world? And I had just spent the last 3 months studying Alvin Plantinga's free will defense. It is powerful. It is complicated. It is a knockdown. It wins. But it's got to be aimed at the right target. And I wasn't quite sure about this colleague of mine. So I asked her, boy, it sounds like you're bothered by this problem of pain and suffering. What do you think God should do about it? What's the biggest challenge that you see? What hurts you most? And she was a bit cagey, and so I said, don't worry, I'm just trying to, this is obviously an important topic. I want to really understand where you're at, because I don't know, I can't read your mind. Maybe we could talk about Alvin Plantinga, but who gives a hill of beans if it's not the right direction to head? After 30 minutes, she came clean and she began to cry. And she said, when I was 14 years old, my mother died of breast cancer. Why did God take my mum? Now, before she said that, I assumed that she was an atheist. I assumed that she didn't even believe in God. But now she's asking me, why did God take my mum? So if I had given 30 minutes of an explanation of Alvin Plantinga's free will defense, she wouldn't have wanted to hear it. It wouldn't have solved her problem. And she still lost her mum. So after she confided the detail that precipitated the evil question, now I know, and here's a tip too, when a non-believer gives you a chance to hit a target, they give you only one chance. You got one bullet in the gun aimed at one target. You hit the bullseye or you miss. And if you miss, it's as good as a mile. And if you miss, they'll tell all their friends that you missed. They will tell you that there is no good answer to this problem, and that to them is a confirmation of their atheism. So it's important when you are going to give an answer, you want to have lots of details first, lots of clarity first, because you dare not miss. And you need the Holy Spirit to help, because we humans, we're going to miss without the Holy Spirit helping us. So yeah, before you jump into an answer of the problem of evil, you have to really understand what the real issue is.
So that's where the value of asking that question, clarifying, yeah, what do you mean by that? Okay, what about this one? Yeah, so you read the Bible and you believe in the Bible. I don't know why you bother. It's just a book of fairy tales. It's made up. It's not actually true.
So as far as possible, I'll just show you my hand and I'll play the game. As far as possible, we want to agree as far as we can and find common ground. The most powerful tactics are to fight the game in their armor, with their logic, with their presuppositions, and then help them themselves figure out how it didn't work.
Okay.
So when we get to that specific question about the book of fairy tales, I'm very open. Okay, hey, maybe you're right. Help me figure this out. Where do we start? Which part of the Bible's fairy tales, or is it the whole Bible that's fairy tales? Do you believe, for example, that what's a good example? Do you believe, for example, that Sennacherib ever existed? And they might say, well, of course not. It's a bunch of fairy tales. And I'd say, well, in that case, I'm cool with that. But what do you do with the Sennacherib cylinder in the British Museum? Is that fairy tales too, or is that like a special case? Or, you know, I want to, because there are parts of the Bible that do cohere to natural records outside the Bible. And by the way, not all of us know this stuff. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you're thinking, well, I don't know anything. That's okay. You don't need the answers. You can just ask the questions. Hey, are there any examples outside the Bible that cohere with history? Even if you don't know, you can still ask them. If they don't know either, you can go away together separately and study it and come back next Tuesday and discuss it. If they do know, they can tell you, so you're learning. And if you both know something, you can discuss it. So regardless of your background, you don't know it, you can learn it together. You do know it, you can teach them. And if there's someone that knows and someone that doesn't know, then somebody is going to learn stuff. So no matter what your background is, everyone wins. And the best part is to make sure that there's a question to come back to for next time. Have we got the Sennacherib thing figured out? Is there anything else? What about this Esarhaddon guy, or Ashurbanipal, or what about Nebuchadnezzar and that kind of stuff? Is that in the British Museum as well, or make it interactive? So you guys have to get back together again. You want every excuse to continue the conversation.
So it sounds like the beauty of asking a question is it not just clarifies their position and lets you better understand where they're coming from and maybe what's behind that position, but also if you're, as the illustration we gave right at the beginning, if you're in a conversation, you don't know where to go next, a question is kind of a get out of jail free card, to use a colloquial term. It's a way to keep the discussion going, even if you don't have the answers. That's kind of a good thing to have in your back pocket.
And it's very powerful to be honest, because as far as that mindset thing, our ultimate goal is not to be the answer guy or the answer girl. Our ultimate goal is to be the number one confidant. We want to be the life coach, the life partner, not in a marital sense, but we want to be, hey, I've had a bad hair day. Let me go and see my friend, Pastor Fraser. Let me go and see my friend, Priscilla. Let me go and see my mate, Aaron, or whoever your name might be. I see a Monica here as well, and is it Luchao clan? You want to be the first person that this person thinks of when they're having a bad hair day. So put yourself in their shoes for a minute. If you guys are talking about fill in the blanks topic, you don't want to ever feel like you got judged. You don't want to feel like your ideas are stupid. You don't want to feel like you're an idiot. You want to feel like you can have an open conversation with Priscilla, and she will treat you with dignity and respect. She'll take your question seriously. She won't have all the answers. And in fact, if she doesn't know the answer, she can tell you. So people ask me. I had one of my colleagues. He is an anaesthetist. If you're on today, great to see you. You've asked me some great questions. I don't have a clue some of the answers. And one day we're talking about DNA, and I thought DNA was the proof that God exists and creates the world. And this guy in like 2 minutes said, Nathan, you're a bit simple. He was not much nicer than I'm probably playing it out to be. He said, Nathan, we don't really need God to explain DNA because we understand all the proteins and proteins and amino acids and the way that it creates DNA. We don't need a God to help us out with that. And I said, oh, really? I didn't know that. You got me. I'm not an expert in amino acids and proteins, but I'd love to learn more. How about you tell me everything you know about it, and I'll go away and do some more study. And it was actually, I think, next Tuesday. Let's get together next Tuesday and go further. So I've just been humiliated in front of my non-believing friend. He's much smarter than me. He got me on a topic I know nothing about. He then shares with me everything he knows, well, at least at a superficial level, because I'm just a beginner person. I go away for 5 days. I pray like crazy. I study like crazy. Talk to some friends like crazy. And then next Tuesday, I had a question for him. It's good to have a question. Hey, my mate, my doctor friend, I don't want to give his name just for decency reasons. I'm really learning a lot about this. It's very interesting. I just got one question for you. How did it all begin? How did the first protein or amino acid get on the board? Because I couldn't figure that part out. And honestly, I spent like the whole weekend, how do I make sense of this? And he said to me, Nathan, I guess you got me on that one. I don't know. So now we're one each. He got me and I got him. So we're one. And I said, hey, no worries. We're one apiece. You got me, I got you. We're just learning together. I don't know, but I'm happy to learn. Then 2 years later, he came to me one day and said, Nathan, about that resurrection of Jesus thing, that's a bunch of fairy tales, isn't it? And I said, I don't know, to a whole bunch of questions. But that particular day, he got my strong suit. Because I had just spent the last 6 months studying under Craig Hazen, Gary Habermas, and Michael O'Connor, probably the 3 best names in the world on the resurrection. And it was all right here, ready to go. And I was able in like 5 minutes to say, well, if you spend me 5 minutes, I reckon I can give you a couple of reasons why I think that the resurrection is historical. And he's like, oh, really? You got some stuff, have you? And so I said, yeah, what do you think of this? After 5 minutes, he's like, wow. I think, what was the exact word he used? He said, Nathan, I know that you don't use hyperbole. When you know your stuff, you know it. When you don't know it, you don't know it. He said, this blows me away. I had earned the respect to be direct on a topic that I knew because I'd been humble enough to admit all the topics I didn't know. And there's a place to tell people, hey, I don't know. You got a question for me? I don't know the answer, but hey, let's work it out together.
Yeah. And Monica makes a good point. She says showing vulnerability encourages and improves relationships in her experience.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
I think it does, because humility is logical. No one knows everything. But being willing to accept that and acknowledge that lets people know, hey, this guy doesn't think he's got all the answers. This lady doesn't think she's got every single answer to every question I've got, but they're real and we can have these discussions. Aaron raised an interesting question, and this is one I've thought about as well. If somebody has life is going well, their relationships seem to be fine, they've got a good job, family, no big health issues, they seem to have no problems in their life, no need for God. How do you begin that discussion with them?
So this is somebody who's like seemingly everything's going right. There's really no need for a God because everything else is taken care of. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. How do you begin this a discussion about faith?
It's there's 2 groups of people that I hang out with. One group are the complete strangers, like when I'm on an airplane or when it's a bit hard with COVID-19, but I'm still traveling at the moment because I'm an essential service personnel, so I get the excuse. But With a complete stranger, I can deal with that separately if you like. I'll start with a friend, someone that I interact with on a daily basis. If I'm interacting on a daily or a somewhat regular basis, in that case, it's really important not to hit a home run. It's a bit like a novel where you're trying to keep the suspense as long as possible. Make them beg you for the gospel. Don't give it to them, because if you give it to them, they'll be like, I'm not interested. But if you hold out and hold out and hold out, it'll come to the point where they're on their knees saying, please, I want Jesus. It's like, oh, really? Okay. So if they appear to have everything together, you obviously don't know them very well yet, because I have not met one person in the universe. As a challenge for you, I dare you to think of one person in the universe who's got everything. We just lost Fraser there. Hopefully you can still hear me. If not, please let me know. If you've met one person in the universe who has no needs and no problems, I'd like to hear about it, because I haven't met that person yet. If they're rich, they've got possessions, but they probably have a hard time trusting people. I've met some very wealthy people. They tend to get a bit cynical and jaded because their attention. Everybody wants a little handout. There's one particular guy one day, for example, he had just bought himself a brand new airplane, several $100,000 worth, a cheap airplane at that. And it was just interesting to watch all these people lining up to say this and do that and get a photo, and hey, can I get $5 for this, and can I get $100 for that? And he confided in me, and I had a relationship with him because I was one of his flight instructors, actually his flight instructor. So we got a fairly personal relationship. And he said to me, Nathan, the one thing that bugs me is I really can't trust anybody. All they want is one thing. If you're with a celebrity, I had a chance to have a chat on a plane not too long ago with someone who's a fairly famous person, a celebrity of sorts. And she actually has another pseudonym because she can't be herself in public. And I said, and I just asking questions. I said, what's the? And she's obviously very well to do, very well off, very highly respected, public figure and all that. I just sort of asked her, what do you find the most challenging part about your life? You've got all these responsibilities, and she said, it's so hard to keep people happy. It's so hard to have my own privacy and my own space. So as she's confiding with me her needs, the things that she cares about, at the Flying Doctors, and I don't want to get, hopefully not too many children here today, my Flying Doctor mates, a lot of them, their number one goal is to get drunk and get laid. And it's very obviously, we understand how that works, but these guys spend their whole life being frustrated about this because they can never quite get enough beer and they can never quite get laid enough. When the conversation is deep and personal, this comes out. So as these well-to-do people who have the perfect career, well-paid, highly respected, this is a big shot doctor or a paramedic or a CEO or whatever else, they're trying to figure out, how can I get someone to like me for who I am? How can I have a drink and not just drown today's sorrows, but tomorrow's sorrows as well? And that's where the gospel is so powerful, because the gospel actually addresses these key needs. It isn't just a quick one-night stand and then tomorrow there's regrets and something else to have to worry about. I don't want to go into any detailed stories tonight, but we all know. So if you think your friends don't have any problems, keep being friends with them, because you'll find out the truth.
And Aaron's kind of pushing this on a little bit deeper, them suggesting they don't need a God at all in their situation. And we were talking earlier about a group of guys, Beer Fridays, and a group of guys that you hung out with who every Friday night would go and have their beer and have a drink. Mm-hmm. Can you, maybe that might help just clarify an option for when your friends don't bring up anything specific or have any seeming need, but as a way of connecting and introducing Christianity, faith to them.
Yeah, brilliant. So I began trying to listen into conversations and then interject with my Christian messages, but that didn't go very well. It's much more powerful to engineer the circumstances. And so let me share with you an actual experiment that I did that was very exciting and very successful. One time I was flying on one of the Flying Doctor planes with some colleagues, and it was a bit of a long flight with nothing to do. We're up on cruise, autopilot's on, everything's all straightforward. So we start just, chatting. And this is at a time when I was a little bit newer to Australia. I'd come from overseas. And so I just asked the guys, I said, tell me about Beer Friday. Sounds like you guys have quite a thing going there. And I'm kind of new to how it works. Tell me everything I need to know about Friday nights and beer. So these guys are taken aback because I'm the goody two shoes Christian guy that doesn't drink, right? I try not to labour the point, but they'd already tarred me with that brush. So they were kind of reticent to begin with. But I said, no, I'm not here to judge you or criticise. I'm just curious. What do you guys? I mean, I don't need all the gory details if you don't want to share, but tell me how Beer Friday works, because they're using this term. We go and get blasted, and we can't wait until next Friday and all this sort of stuff.
Now, just interject. I would think that just means going to the pub and having a drink.
Yeah. I had no idea what it was. I knew even less than you, so I was just asking. I said, tell me, what is it? So they said, yeah, we go to the pub. But they gave me, and we spent about 30 or 40 minutes, me just asking questions about how the pub works. What do you do and how do you go about it? And a whole bunch of things came out. They said it's important to know, Nathan, that we work hard all week. Yeah, I understand. We all worked hard together, yep. But when Friday night comes along, we need a break. We need to shift gears and move into the weekend. And when we go to the pub, that's the demarcation. No longer the work week, now it's the weekend. And we're all happy about that. So it's important to go with your bunch of mates. It's important to go to the pub, and you want some good music. You don't want to just sit there in a corner where it's all quiet and dingy. You want the lights, and you want to have some good stuff, some old time stuff. Particularly, and my colleagues in this particular conversation were sort of similar ages to myself, so we're sort of in our 40s. So we've been sort of away from high school for about 20 years now. So it's got to be songs from that sort of era, And I asked, why those songs? What's wrong with the new ones? Aren't the new ones pretty cool too? Oh yeah, but the old ones, they take our memories back. That was a time when our life was a bit simpler, a bit less complicated. We had a teenage innocence back then. We want to relive those times. And I said, so tell me about the alcohol. What goes on there? And I said, oh, it's really important that you pick the brand that you first got drunk on. They use a different expression, but that we get the idea. This alcohol is special to us because this was our first time, if you like our first girlfriend, our first beer. This is the flavor that we need because it takes us back once again to that time of innocence. Life is complicated now, it's all messed up. And some of them, I knew the stories of the complexities of, the family dynamics and divorce and, lots of family estrangement and financial challenges and all kinds of things. Even though they're very well paid, they still have financial challenges, believe it or not. So the next thing they said was, when the alcohol starts flowing, it's the great equalizer. Everybody gets pissed together. Sorry, everybody gets drunk together. We are all equals now. It doesn't matter whether you're a boss. It doesn't matter whether you're a blue-collar worker. It doesn't matter if you're the guy on the street. When you're at work in the week, you got your hierarchy, but on the weekend, you're in the pub, everyone's exactly the same. Alcohol is the great equalizer. The other thing they said was, it's really important to do this together as a group. You never get drunk by yourself. Only drunks do that. But when you go with your mates, we celebrate together. We sing songs. We talk about nothing. You just shoot the breeze. You know how pub banter works, and just basically forget. They even said this. We try to forget the stuff that's going on. Think about other things, because real life is not so much fun sometimes. So after about 40 minutes of this, I was ticking all the boxes in my mind mentally and thinking, yep, that makes sense. Just like my Sabbath. Yep, that sounds like my Sabbath. I wasn't saying this because that's condescending, right? But I'm just thinking it. So after about 40 minutes, go ahead.
Let me just run through those things you said. It's a separation from the work to the weekend. It's a reminder of better times. It's a great equalizer. Everyone's the same. There's no one better, no worse. And it's when they're all together. And it's an opportunity to, I guess, think of or forget what is gone and focus on what is now. Okay.
And I guess another point that they made too, I thought was very interesting. In paramedics and in air ambulance and that kind of stuff, you have these on-call periods and these times where you're on break. But if someone else calls in sick, the boss could call you up and say, "Hey, Fraser, can you cover a shift for us?" And of course, everybody wants to avoid getting called out on a Friday night. Friday night's like a sacred time for these people. Beer Friday is like special. It's almost a religion, I'd almost say. So the beauty of having the alcohol as soon as possible is as soon as the alcohol goes to the lips, if the boss man calls up and says, "I'm really sorry, this other guy, Nathan, called in sick. Can you," I didn't, by the way, "could you please cover for us?" It's shameful to tell the boss, "No, I don't want to," because you kind of oblige, with essential services. You got to say yes if you can. But there's an easy out. If you've had some alcohol, and the boss would too if he had the chance, you'd say, "Oh, boss, I'd love to help you out. I'd be there right now, but I'm really sorry. I just had a couple." And the boss would totally understand. He's that, "I'm totally with you. I'll go and call somebody else. I'll go and call Nathan." So for them, having alcohol was actually an insurance policy to get a Sabbath. To get the weekend.
Okay.
So as a result of that, I'll let you ask a question, but I had a follow up to this after I just figured out this stuff. That's where the conversation gets very interesting.
So you found that this was kind of an equivalent to something that you'd experienced as your Sabbath, and then did you explain that to them?
Absolutely. But the trick is to ask questions rather than to give answers.
Okay.
So I said, "I've got a question for you guys. How would you guys feel if I told you that I have a Beer Friday too?" And they're like, "What? What do you mean? You don't drink beer?" And I went through the list of things they just told me. I said, "Well, on a Friday night, I do this, tick the box. I do this, tick the box. Got to be together. Yep. Got to have the music. Yep. Got to have the best food. Yep. Got to be thinking about better times. Tick, 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 tick." And they're like blown away. They said, "Well, but you're like one of us. I thought you were different. I thought you're like a Christian or something." I said, "Yeah, that. I do believe in Jesus, but I think the weekend is pretty important too, because I think Jesus said the weekend's pretty important." And this is where it got very interesting. I just had an epiphany at that moment, and I turned to my mates and I said to them, "It sounds like our two Beer Fridays are pretty similar. It looks like, don't you think? Do you think it's a stretch to think that they're kind of like almost like one is reminiscent of the other, perhaps?" And they're like, yeah, it seems like that. And I'm thinking, so what do you think is the real one, and which one is the counterfeit, the one that's imposing itself as a pretender? Do you think beer was invented first, or do you think the 7-day week was invented first? And you could have heard a pin drop. And I said, and this is a very important time to save face, because don't forget, we don't want to win the argument. We want to win the people. So if I'd left it there, I could win the argument and I got no friends anymore. And then at the end of the conversation, so I said, I just backpedaled and said, "You know what? Stupid observation there. I'm sorry. It probably doesn't make any sense anyway. Let's talk about the weather or something else, the footy or something." So I just turned away from the conversation. But the guys now are on tenterhooks because they're really bugged by this. It's a bother to them. What did come first? What's the origin of the 7-day week? When was the first? Because it's kind of jokes in the pub. Beer is one of the oldest substances known to mankind. So now they're thinking very hard, and I tried as hard as I could to have them save face, because I don't want them to feel embarrassed. I don't want them to feel like they're trapped. So I gave them an easy out, but they came back and said, "No, tell us more. This Sabbath thing sounds pretty cool. What do you do? What if the boss calls you up on a Friday night? Do you have to go into work, or what do you do?" And I said, "Actually, I've got a blessing in that I don't need alcohol to tell the boss man that I'm not available for work. I can just tell the boss man that I've got another boss man. And the other boss man has said that everybody, whether you're low or high on the totem pole, everybody gets Beer Friday off. So unless there's life or limb, I'm not available tonight either. Sorry, boss. I mean, I'd love to help you out. If it's if I can wash the plane Monday morning or Sunday morning, even Saturday night, happy to do it. But except for life and limb, it's Beer Friday. So, and these guys are like, wow, that's really cool. It actually really helped. And I had some very interesting private conversations with several individuals after that, and this is, I think, a powerful model that I've used for other topics and other conversations.
Yeah, and I guess the beauty there is asking the questions, listening to the responses, and then I've heard different people, and Greg Kuchel's one of them, talk about this idea of leaving a stone in the shoe. It's a little piece of information that may not currently fit with their current worldview, or that may challenge it. It's not enough to completely blow their mind, but it's enough to get them thinking and questioning. And then if you're their confidant, you're their friend, then when they have those questions, they'll have an opportunity to come back to you and ask you.
Yeah. So as we're having a conversation about pick your topic, I've seen a few comments here about, let's see, what did I see here? There's so many comments. You guys are awesome.
Well, Susanna's made one about the law, the commandments.
Okay, what was that? What was that comment? I haven't seen that one.
How do you defend that God's law is still relevant?
Oh, okay. Yes. So the most powerful thing to remember is our goal isn't to prove anything yet. That's the last thing at the end of the day when they're at the foot of the cross ready to surrender to Jesus. But there could be 1,000 steps to get to that one last point. We want to ask the question about law. So if they're asking you, well, how do you know about God's law, or what do you think about God's law? You instantly want to be thinking to yourself, why does this person care about law? Is this person a lawyer? Is this person someone who has seen law carried out in a right way and a wrong way and wants to figure out what's just? What's it about law that made this topic come up? Because as we can imagine, there's literally 1,000 different ways to go with God's law. And if I pick one of the 999 wrong tentacles, it's going to not be persuasive. Satan, by the way, for those of you that believe in the adversary, I certainly do, he doesn't win his arguments by using truth and logic and fact. He wins his argument by having a whole bunch of similar sounding ideas nearby. So if it's like, imagine you've got this one gem, and this one gem is on the floor, and this one gem represents the truth. And then you have the enemy come along and just chuck a whole bunch of glass beads onto the floor, maybe 1,000 of them. And then your job is to find the truth still. The enemy doesn't care which marble you pick up as long as it isn't the right one. And when we have a discussion, you'll have noticed this if you've had discussions with people who are non-believers before. They'll ask you a question, you'll give an answer, and then there's a tangential question in a different direction. And after about 5 minutes, you've had like 20 different questions in 20 different directions. And pretty soon you're confused and lost. The other guy's confused and lost. It's time for a beer and you're done. So it's really powerful when people ask a question is you take the question seriously and say, I want to give your one question justice. Let's deal with your one question. If you change your mind and want to do another question, that's fine. But let's just do it together, agree on it, one question at a time. Let's do God's law? Right, let's do God's law. Let's start with what you think is the most important part. The person with the questions, that's the person who guides the discussion. And there's actually a sequential strategic intention on my part. I'm not asking random questions. I have a roadmap in my mind where I'm specifically creating a path from here to the foot of the cross by asking questions. It's like digging a hole in front of, when a car is bogged in the mud and it can't go anywhere. So what do? You dig a hole in front of the car so it can roll forward to the next spot. And you dig a hole to roll forward to the next stop. Maybe you put a couple of boards under there so you can get over to the next stop. John the Baptist did this for Jesus. He came to make the crooked path straight. And that's what our job is. We are here like a John the Baptist, maybe not as special or as privileged as him, but in our own little humble way, we're trying to help prepare the way for the Lord. to the foot of the cross.
Yeah, I love that. That end goal is to see them, yeah, having a decision to follow Jesus and make that for themselves. So you talk about the value of questions. What are some of these? Can you just run through a few examples of questions that you could say when someone raises a topic?
Sure. So it seems to be, and there are different people have different motives for asking questions, and it's not really my job to read minds, and it's not really my job to try and guess, because I usually guess wrong. I had a very interesting conversation with somebody of a particular denomination that I thought I knew pretty well. I knew this denomination like the back of my hand, I thought, 'cause I spent quite a number of months studying in depth this person's denominational background. And we started one day having a discussion, and I had this assumption that this person had a whole bunch of beliefs according to the doctrines that I'd studied for this particular denomination. And as we began this conversation, I said, so I guess because you believe in X, Y, Z, therefore blah, blah. And he says, but I don't believe that. And I'm like, but you come from this particular denomination, right? He's like, yeah, but I don't believe that. So one thing I've learned is, as smart as you think you are, as smart as I thought I was, I don't take anything for granted. If you tell me that you are a, I don't know, pick a denominator. I don't want to be picking specifics today. If you have a particular background, and I may have spent a whole bunch of time studying your particular worldview, I will still treat you as if you're the first person I've met from your background. Even though I may have spoken to 100 people before from your denomination or your background or your persuasion, you're a materialistic atheist. I've spoken to probably many hundreds of people just like you. I will treat you as if you're the first person I ever met, because I really don't know. It could be that you have a particular flavor that's different to other people. And if I take you on board with the assumption of other details and flavors, I'm going to be confused. And then when I start sharing details with you, you're going to say, but that's not me, it doesn't work. And then I'm going to have a bigger hill to climb to convince you that I'm relevant, because now I'm talking to somebody else and not you. So I can't emphasize enough, you have to know who you're talking with, what is important to them, what is it that they believe. And this is particularly important on Facebook, for example, which is a very difficult place to chat and share faith, because you only have like a sound bite. You know, I'm on a couple of private forums where Christians and atheists have fairly strained relations, shall we say. And it takes a very thick skin to handle, because it's very I'll use the word vituperative. It's very angry. It's very hurtful. Some very painful things come up there. But when people are so emotional, like here's a knockdown win for you. I've had a number of people come to me with their middle finger standing up nice and straight, fist in my face, and a whole bunch of words to go with it, along the lines of, get lost, you believer fellow. We don't have any interest in your faith. You don't belong here. Go and fill in the blanks. I've come to the point of finding this to be a very fertile place to share faith, and there's a very effective way to do it. And I'm not talking about Ray Comfort or those guys. They're as wonderful as they try to be. When someone comes to you with emotion, someone comes to you with great feeling, it's very powerful to reflect and observe. Hey, if it's even a complete stranger, hey, my name's Nathan. It looks like this is a really important issue to you. It looks like you have real, deep-seated, strong feelings about whether it's me personally, or whether it's my belief in the fill in the topic blank. You know, I had one colleague come to me about a gender identity and marriage equality kind of stuff, and a fairly long barrage of fairly hurtful things. And it was tempting to get defensive and get all my arguments out. I had a few in my back pocket. But it was very powerful to start with saying, wow, it sounds like this is a really important topic to you. Do you mind sharing with me what it is that makes it so important to you? And after a number of minutes, this person shared with me their family background, and it completely made sense. This person wasn't attacking me, although it felt like it. This person was trying to defend a family member because the perception was that this family member had been attacked and mistreated. And so I totally agreed. I said, boy, if I was in your shoes, if I saw what happened to your family member, total agreement. I'm sorry to hear. That's terrible. I'm sure if Jesus were here, he'd probably say the same thing too. That's disgusting. I'm so sorry to hear all that. And then we get into the brass tacks.
Yeah.
Then we get to go into the nuts and bolts of, well, what specifically do you want to have a chat about? Gender identity. And it's important not to push. And if they don't want to talk about it, go back to the weather. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if they want to chat, then ask them the questions. I have not met. I've chatted with. I don't think I'm exaggerating to say thousands of non-believers. I have never yet, not one in hundreds at least. I've never met one who didn't want to tell me their opinion. So I always ask for their opinion. Hey, what do you think about this? And now I'm not judging them. I'm not telling them that's a stupid opinion. I just keep on asking more questions. Well, your opinion about fill in the blanks, how does that work with this? Or with a person with your particular background, how do you deal with that? And if it's a stranger on an airplane seat, I've only got 40 minutes, I'll look at my watch, I'll go 30 minutes, all about them. And then the last 10 minutes, I'll have a couple of special extra credit questions about the gospel. And I'll be very tactful about it. If they backpedal, I'll let them backpedal. I'll usually try and backpedal faster than them, because if I backpedal faster than they do, then they'll try and call me back a little bit. Hang on, just one question for you. And then the conversation can finish with the gospel in the driver's seat. But takes a bit of practice, but you can do it without even making anybody feel embarrassed or anything.
But I hope if you're watching this, you're not too disappointed. I hope you didn't come into this expecting that Nathan was going to share with you some super slam dunk response that will, shut everyone down and make them believe in one step. Because it doesn't work that way, does it, Nathan? It's a long journey. You're a step in the process.
Well, the Holy Spirit can work in mysterious ways. I do think we do have some very powerful weapons, but I'm reticent to share because it's so easy. And I'm speaking to myself now as a hypocrite. It's so easy to lose sight of who we're here for and who it's about. And I'm embarrassed to admit to you, there have been a number of times when I have used apologetics to make myself feel better about myself. And I think I've turned people away from Christ because of that. I do have some slam dunk arguments. I'm reticent to use. It's like a nuclear weapon. You can use them, but if it's not inspired by the Holy Spirit, the enemy can certainly turn it and have it blow up in the wrong way, or have it might feel good to you, but there's fallout behind the scenes later, which is very, very hurtful. There is one thing that is pretty powerful, and that is. And this I borrowed from a guy called Marcus Mundell, who is a pastor here in the North New South Wales Conference. And I kind of have to share it in context, but I haven't even got I'm happy to do it if you want me to. It's really important to not talk about anything religious until you've got the rapport to do so. If it's a complete stranger on the street, you need about 4 or 5 minutes first to build the rapport, and then do some digging. And I'm always looking for some clues. It's like a detective. Like I'm not into these crime detective things, but I believe it would be probably something like that. You're looking for clues. Any jewelry the person's wearing, any kind of a T-shirt, any kind of a slogan, because I've found out now in the modern Western world, most of us are affluent enough that we kind of get to choose what we put on our bodies. Yesterday, for example, I was at school, and there was a guy there who brought his motorbike to the school and a sidecar to pick up his daughter. It was a Honda motorbike with a Honda sidecar, and he'd gone out to the shops to buy himself a very special matching, in all the colors, matching suit with the Honda logo on it. So now I've got an instant in the door question. Hey, looks like you're into Hondas. Tell me about bikes. What was it that got you into the bikes? And there's an instant start right there. And after 4 or 5 minutes of just naturally asking more questions about whatever it is. I like this particular brand of bike. Why do you like that bike? And it's got more horsepower. Is it the fuel tank? I don't know anything about bikes, right? But I can pretend to show an interest. Well, not pretend. That's a bit unkind. But I'm showing an interest in the bikes, and it's very easy from that point forward to start finding out about his family, his friends, what he cares about. My ultimate goal is to figure out what's the most important thing to him. Because once I've figured out what's most important to him, then I can figure out how the gospel will answer that need. And that's where it gets powerful. And the specific slam dunk stuff will depend upon the specific person I'm dealing with. I've got sort of like a handful of 4 or 5 tools or stones that I'll put in someone's shoe, or if it's the last time I'll ever see somebody, the appeal that I'll leave with them, that will, most of the time, I've never yet not had success. I mean, I don't have a clue who's going to be in the kingdom, but it's never gotten to the point of, I hope I never see your face ever again. I've never had someone feel like embarrassed, and almost every time, even the people that are non-believers, they'll say things like, I think it was meant to be that we met today. This is the non-believer telling me this sort of stuff, and of course that makes me feel wonderful, because I of course agree. I think that God engineered stuff too. So
yeah. So I just want to recap those key, I guess, kind of key things you brought up. First one is trying to react defensively when someone brings up a comment or a point.
Avoid defensiveness at all costs. That will take you out of the game right away.
Avoid being defensive. Ask questions. And then listen to the responses.
Yeah.
And see if you can build a picture of what this person's going through, what their experience is, what their background is or has been, and then plan to leave a stone in their shoe of some sort. 1 or 2 questions that will just gently, but leave them something to think about. Question their approach or the worldview that you've understood from the answers they've given to your questions. And then I guess the last one is, remember, this is a long game. Sometimes you only have a short amount of period with people, but if this is a friend and you're engaged in this relationship, be willing to play the long game. Journey with them.
I see a question here from David and Carol. Maybe that's my parents. If it is, wonderful. Good to see you. If it's not, I apologize. A couple of, I guess it's been about 5 weeks ago now, I had a couple of flights there and back, and on the way back, I ended up sitting next to somebody who was a professional painter. And I asked this person, what's your, I'm trying to ask innocent questions, figure out about this person. What's your expertise? What kind of painting do you do? And this person began to sort of blush a bit and hum and ha. And so I sort of backpedaled. Oh, don't worry, dumb question, do you have any other interests? And so this person started talking about music and everything else. And of course, my wife's into music, so we had a common ground there. Found out later a bit about why the person was a bit nervous about painting because, anyway. So we, just the first 30, 40 minutes, completely focusing on this particular person's worldview. And this particular person did not believe in God, did not have any interest in the Christian faith, had been raised nominally a Christian, but was fed up with it and decided to go another path. I tried to figure out, I asked, do you mind sharing what it was? And she didn't want to go there. So I said, that's all right. I don't need to know. Just curious. Dumb question. And after a while, I was trying to figure out, how can I get to this girl? How can I figure out what works? And so I asked her, do you think the whole like religion thing is made up, or do you think there's like a historical Jesus, or is it like a whole figment of the imagination kind of a thing? And she kind of went with the whole figment of the imagination, whole made up, no, nothing at all is historical kind of a story. And so, of course, that's my strong suit because I happen to spend a lot of time studying this kind of stuff. So I said, well, have you had a chance to sort of look into this very much, or is it sort of just sort of an off the cuff? Because I'm trying to save her face, right? I don't want to embarrass her with a direct contradiction. That'll just go poorly. So I said, well, I'm just kind of curious if you had a chance to look into this very much, or are you just sort of going off the cuff? And she admitted honestly that she was sort of going off the cuff. And I said, look, that's fine, you know, respect. I said, but do you have an interest in sorting this out for real? Or do you just sort of want to go with off the cuff and leave it at that? And this person didn't really want to explore. So I sort of asked, you know, hey, do you have a reason for not wanting to figure things out? You know, why would you hang on to something which you can't even prove or explain or explore or have any interest in? And she said, it has no relevance to my life. And I said, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, gotcha. But for the last 40 minutes, she had just shared with me what was important to her life, what was central to her life. And in her world, what was important to her was happiness, her friends, peace and joy, and having this sense of purpose in her life. She had confided these details with me, but had just now said she didn't want to have anything to do with Jesus and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, how can I get around this Jesus concept without even her believing that he exists? So then, to borrow from Marcus Mundell, I said, she'd also said that she likes doing experiments. She's sort of, and I think it was a saving face thing, but she said, I like to do empirical experiments and I like to try things and test things out for myself. So I said, because it's like 5 minutes to go now, end of conversation, plane lands, I'll never see this person again, probably ever. And I'm praying, the whole time I'm praying quietly to myself, God, please give me wisdom, please help me. So I said to her, I have an experiment that I'd like to put forward here. Maybe it's a dumb experiment. I'm always trying to backpedal, you know, I don't want to make it feel like it's anything. Maybe it's a dumb idea, so don't worry about it if you don't think it'll work. But how would you like to know for sure that Jesus doesn't exist? Would you like to put that one to bed? Because you sort of felt, you know, you Christians sort of judge us and make us feel uncomfortable. I said, well, if you could prove that Jesus didn't exist, wouldn't that give you peace and confidence and calmness in your life? Wouldn't you be able to move on and not feel guilty about, because she's actually into nudist painting and that kind of stuff. I said, wouldn't you have a nice, peaceful life if you could just ditch the whole thing and bury it? And she said, yeah, that'd be helpful, actually. I said, well, here's a test for you. Why don't you go to your pillow tonight? Don't tell anybody. Don't tell me. Don't tell your friends or anybody. Go to your pillow tonight and pray. So how do I do that? I said, why don't you secretly in your mind think, and if you're going to do it behind closed doors, and just say, if there's a Jesus out there, I really want you to reveal yourself to me. I want to know in a way that makes sense to me that you care about me and that you actually have a plan for my life. And if you don't, I'll take that on board and I'll move on with my life. But if you do, I'm open to it. And I said to her, I believe this Jesus guy not only exists, but he can read your heart. If you're just playing games and tricks, like, you know, I'm going to try and, you know, get a genie out of a bottle, he will respectfully bow out of that party trick. But if you sincerely are looking for him, I believe he will show up. And I spent the last couple of minutes just sharing with her how Jesus had made a difference in my life. I said, I believe that you'll find peace beyond measure, that your artistry will be so important and so essential. She'd also been going on about the importance of people that are, you know, marginalized on the fringes. I said, you know, believe it or not, Jesus is actually on your side. She's a bit of an activist as well. I said, Jesus could actually help you with your activism work, because more than anybody else in the world, Jesus cares about the same people that you care about. Imagine if you and he were on the same side. And she's like, I hadn't thought about that before. So I told her, don't tell anybody, don't let anybody rig the dice for you, because if you tell somebody and then things happen, you might be tempted to think, well, maybe some human engineered some circumstances to trick me into thinking it's all real. But she said, no, I'll try that out. And I haven't heard back. I probably won't hear back. But I've done that a few times. And every single time I've offered it, given the right context, the right person, every single person I've asked so far has accepted the challenge. And I thought I haven't heard back. But I trust Jesus to work that one out.
Yeah. And I think that's a crucial part to this picture too, Nathan, is, you know, we love to know the outcomes of things, but God is in control. He loves these people more than we ever will. And he will not leave them. He will continue to work with them and for them and in them if they allow it. So we just do our part. Hey, I want to thank you for contributing your time and your experience with us. Folks, we're going to wrap up shortly. Any final questions that you've got, shoot them in the chat, and we've got a bit of time to cover them before we close off.
Just for Susanna's benefit, perhaps, maybe
yes.
She might feel like I dodged her question. I'm not trying to dodge any questions. I'm happy to answer a question straight, because it can become a bit of a game. You know, the 1,000 infinite regressions of questions. It can be annoying. You know, like when I was a kid, you know, I asked Dad, "But why, Dad?" And he'd give an answer. But why? But you know, if you keep on asking questions ad nauseum, it can be frustrating. So I'm not advocating to be annoying about it. But showing genuine interest. Susanna asks, how do I feel about God's law? Assuming you believe that it is still relevant. Yes, I'm kind of one of these funny, strange people that believe that God's character is beautifully clear and consistent throughout Scripture. One of the most powerful ways that I've found to communicate this with my friends, and by the way, when I was at Biola University, my view was very much a minority view, even though it's a mainstream evangelical Christian college that's highly respected. The general view is very different to what I see. God's law in their mind is like an old covenant sort of a thing that's been done away with. They use the term scaffolding, which is no longer required because the building has been completed. The scaffolding can now be removed because we have the love of Christ. One of the points I found really helpful is to have a look at the picture, the concept of God on his throne in heaven. In the book of Ezekiel, my favorite book, we have a couple of pictures in chapter 1 and chapter 10 of Ezekiel, which indicates to us the nature of God's throne room. This appears to be interestingly similar to accounts we have in the book of Revelation about the throne of God. And when you look at Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and Moses is being asked to construct a tabernacle, a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, God says, I find it very interesting that there appears to be a lot of parallels between these creatures with these wings around the throne of God, where the glory of God is hovering. Now, in the real life heaven, we seem to have these living creatures with eyes that are in a circle, and you know, the wings and the whole levitating vehicle that's floating around.
Yeah.
It seems pretty clear to me, and I'd be interested in some feedback on this. It's pretty clear to me that the Ark of the Covenant is a simplistic, if you like, I don't want to use the word caricature because that kind of sounds wrong, but it's like a cartoon, a simplistic, like a stick drawing representation of the throne of glory in heaven. Interestingly enough, the temple on earth and in heaven in Revelation, I think it's 15, says this is the tabernacle of the testimony, the temple of the testimony, the ark of the testimony. And the question I have is, what exactly is this testimony if it isn't the Ten Commandments? It's quite clear to me that the foundation seats of God in heaven, as well as God's second dwelling place on earth in the temple of old, appears to be the Shekinah glory surrounded by these angelic beings with fire all around, and God's Ten Commandments, God's immutable law, right underneath the place where God sits. I'm very open to explanations on this, and I've written a little bit about this in a paper I wrote looking at Sabbath, actually, of all things. It's very interesting to me that the place in heaven would be called the temple of the testimony. If that testimony isn't God's law, I want to know what else it is. Because it's quite clear that from Hebrews that the earthly and the heavenly sanctuary are supposedly representations one of the other. So I think there's a lot more to study there. I haven't got all the answers, but there's some very fertile soil. And I would say if we dig some more in the nature of God's throne and the nature of God's dwelling place, we might find some insights there that could potentially be very interesting, particularly, just as a closing suggestion, the 12 stones on the breastplate seem uncannily similar to the 12 gems, the 12 gates of the New Jerusalem. I'll leave that teaser with you and invite you to do some more study.
Nice. Hey, once again, thanks so much. Getting a lot of appreciation for both you and Sven, the presentations you guys have shared. What we do want to do, folks, is we want to get some resources into your hands. So keep an eye on your emails. That'll come out this week. We'll shoot you a PDF with the key points from the messages, as well as some recommended reading and some good resources that you can check out, just for you to continue to study and learn and just grow more in your knowledge. So as Priscilla says, you can put together your own plays and your own playlists and slam dunks.
Yeah. I want to just point out that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you go, and then we'll wrap up.
Just a couple of observations. This kind of sharing faith with people is a lifetime journey. It takes practice, and you'll make mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes. I would be honored to be a fellow coach with you on the journey. If you find yourself in a situation, hey Nathan, how do I deal with this particular person, this particular situation, this particular whatever, I'd be happy to brainstorm with you. I don't have all the answers, but I know someone that does. And I've had enough opportunities to practice on enough different situations that I've got a pretty good handle on. I haven't had any new cases for a long time. So if it comes to a particular topic, a particular situation, a particular whatever it is, I'm pretty sure we could work it out together. And it's always good to remember that you can always bide time. When someone asks you something or your situation's developing in a certain way, just say, hey, great, take it on notice. Let's meet together next Tuesday. And in the meantime, I'll go and do some homework, and then come hit me up. We'll work on it together. Or Fraser has got some expertise in some areas that I don't. So Pastor Fraser, Sven, myself, and others too. There's lots of good resources out there.
Yeah. What I recommend, folks, I've posted in the chat a WhatsApp link. That's to join a group, an apologetics group that Sven and Nathan and myself are in, as well as a few others. If you want to join that, then you can always post a question, post a call for help, and as a group, we'll kind of crowdsource a response and support you and coach you along the way. Absolutely. In the PDF I send out, there'll also be some contact details. So if you want to have a private discussion, that'll be available as well. The whole reason we wanted to do this was because sharing Jesus is the greatest privilege and the greatest honor that you and I have. He's changed my life. He's changed Sven's life. He's changed Nathan's life. I hope that you have the opportunity to, allow him to change your life too. And we want to share that with other people as well. We want to do it to the best of our ability, as effectively as we can. And so this series was just, I guess, a bit of a teaser to give us and you some tools and some skills to be able to do that more effectively. But I want to encourage you to not just take this as an information gathering exercise, but more a opportunity to actually engage in this. If you're a believer and you follow Jesus, then ask him to put on your heart 2 or 3 people that you can pray for, and that he'll give you opportunities to put what you've learned into practice. And be courageous, be humble, be bold, and have a go. Ask questions, put those tactics into play, and see what God can do. You're going to make mistakes. We all have. We all will. That's okay. But you're never going to, you're never going to experience what it is to be on the front line of sharing Jesus with people until you actually have a crack. So I really want to encourage you to get involved. Sorry, was that Nate?
It's fun. I got addicted to it. I didn't even know what it was 9 years ago. I thought I was a career pilot, and I still love flying. But seeing people grapple with the gospel it's exciting. It's
absolutely
contagious.
Yeah, and you know that what you're doing, there is nothing that matters more. It is it is eternity shaping. And that's such a huge privilege. So I want to thank you for joining us. It's been great to have you on board. Thanks for your engagement, your discussions. We hope to see you on the WhatsApp group, or alternatively, contact us via email. Nathan's put his email there. I'm going to put mine in as well, and then we'll send all these out in the PDF that we sent out. As long as you've registered, you'll get that. Otherwise, if you need more information, I'll post the link to the videos at this website, theoasis.adventist.org.au. So there we'll have a page where you can, it's called Outreach. That's a page where you can find links to the videos. You can find, we'll put the PDF up there as well. So you've got somewhere to go back to, and you can keep learning, keep growing. And we hope to hear your stories as you put this into play. So folks, that's it from us. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we look forward to hearing how you put this into practice.
God bless everybody. Thanks, Pastor Fraser.
Thanks, Nate. See you.